So I'm Tammy Sexton. I'm Chief Revenue Officer at Quiller. And thanks everybody, first of all, for taking the time to attend the webinar. This is our second in the series of Guardian Agent. With me, I have Vidit Arora, that's the CEO and founder of Quiller, and Ben Godard at Spotnana. So with that, I will kick it off and let you guys do your thing.
Perfect. Thanks, Sammy. Thanks for the intro. So, everybody, great to have you all on, and thanks for taking out the time on a morning here. As Sammy was mentioning, right, this is volume two of our Guardian Agent series, and we had a very good reception in the first episode that we did, focusing on how we are seeing AI starting to get adopted, and especially as we think about enterprises looking at it, agentic AI coming into the picture. The Guardian Agent series is meant to be nothing related to Quiller or the product, but more focused on bringing in thought leaders from different companies, different organizations that you're working with, and seeing how they are looking at different challenges when it comes to different facets of AI adoption. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to dive today into the AI confidence gap. I think we all know, right? The adoption is exploding, but there is a big gap that we are seeing between the confidence that the security team has and the rate at which adoption is happening in all other organizations. Everything from the board wanting to adopt it to our engineering and technology organizations adopting it. So today, to address that and to talk about that, here with me is Ben. Ben is the head of security at Spotnana, somebody who's being, he's not just using AI in tiny pockets, but his organization and them are on the forefront of AI adoption, and he is one of the people that I have usually looked up to when it comes to thinking through things on how security should be led and how it should be a business enabler and a step forward. So Ben, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. You're too kind.
Couldn't thank you enough. Um, so before we get into any kind of particular specifics, and let me shut this down. Before we get into any kind of particular specifics of AI adoption and how things are, right? Um, the entire industry and everybody seems to be talking about AI like it's a very well structured, well organized machine that's coming in of adoption, very well intentional. But I think the picture on the ground is very different because of the art of possibilities that AI gets it with it for the companies, for from productivity to commercial benefits. Um, I think the real picture is very different on how AI is getting adopted in companies and how it's getting used by, pretty much, every person in the company. So let's start with something that's very simple, right? Where are enterprises actually using AI? What are the unknowns that you see inside these organizations, right? So let's just start from there to see what do you see as the reality of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. The scary thing is, the reality is we technically don't know everywhere it's being used. Where we can actually see it, we're seeing it being used for everything, right? Whether it's helping you with emails, helping you with reports. Like, honestly, the more visibility we get into how people are accessing and using AI, it's, I don't see a place where people aren't using it. They're using it for personal stuff. They're using it for work stuff. They're using it for helping them code, to analyzing debug logs, to workflows that automate everything. And that's before you even start talking about an AI offering that you're offering to your customers to either embed or put AI on top of your current product. So it's kind of scary. It's kind of the wild, wild west. I feel like the difference. I mean, I grew up through the dot-com bubble. With that one, I think the barrier of entry was a lot harder, and it wasn't on everyone's mind. Like most people didn't have internet access when you think about it at the time. Nowadays, everyone has internet access in most developed countries, and the barrier of entry is a click or a link or an app that you can install on your phone. Like, it is everywhere, and we are just not equipped to be able to, like, the doors are already open. The livestock have already run out into the field. Like, trying to close the doors or figure out what's going on, it's a moot point at this point.
That's a very fair point. That's a very fair point. And I think that's I think that's exactly what we are also seeing across the entire market, right? It's not about a deployment. It's not about a particular strategy of how to using it. It's just becoming part of everybody's behavior to use AI, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be our parents, whether it be a developer, whether it be, the head of a company. I think it's just becoming part of um, everybody's daily workflow to use AI, to
Yeah.
use AI agents even, right? And more and more, what we are starting to see is enterprises are becoming like this, kind of like this web or this network of humans, apps, AI agents that are kind of starting to work together, right? Like the more I talk to companies, and when they start explaining to me what they saw yesterday and what they heard a developer was doing, or what they did or what they experimented with yesterday, it's starting to almost feel like, how much the enterprise architecture is fully changing, right? So let me ask you this, right? What's actually changed, right? Why is this different from what you said, internet came, etc.? Why is this different from the SaaS or the cloud transition, right? What has changed?
Yeah, no, like I said, I think it's that barrier of entry. Trying to make an analogy, someone in the company can't just say, "Hey, I want a new email provider, and I'm just going to start using this for work email." Like some people try to do that. They try to like copy their data over to a new email client, but that's easier to see, right? Because it starts in a very kind of parameterized box. Um, that completely goes out the window with AI. In fact, I saw this funny tongue-in-cheek comment on LinkedIn from a security person that I follow where they're like, if you block AI, your people are just copying it and pasting it onto their phone. Right? Like because they
Yeah.
see the value, they're gonna use it. And it's us trying to block it is that's the thing that's fundamentally changed. I'd say the other big thing is from a security perspective, because that's what I deal with day in and day out. Traditional security controls are based on the assumption that we can enumerate all the endpoints. I mean, that's the whole point, is that we basically can figure out all the doors and what are the vulnerabilities and the way someone gets into our environment. Um, we cannot enumerate all the endpoints when it comes to AI. It's this black box that's getting integrated into every system that we then don't know what it's going to talk to behind the scenes. I'm seeing people taking, doing stuff that you would never do with normal systems, and I'm seeing them do it with production data or sensitive data or just a fundamental misunderstanding of the risk. I think um, there's many things now where people realize like, oh, I would never call the API this way, right? Like the bugs, the vulnerabilities that you're dealing with are very much something you can analyze, you can get your head around and say, okay, well, what is the logical conclusion? If someone could do this, like take SQL injection for instance. Initially, it was a very naive way of doing SQL, right? You would just say, hey, whatever the person puts in, we're just going to, concatenate a string and run a query, right? And then they started realizing, well, wait a minute, if we're not doing input checking, an attacker can take advantage of that and basically change the instructions so it's no longer just input. We're now merging in the execution space, and we solve that by saying, okay, we'll parameterize it. We know what we want, so we can actually pull out the pieces that we're going to let someone change. With AI, we don't know what we want, right? We think we know what we want, but we're wanting it to make decisions for us. We're wanting in actions to cascade and do other things. So it's so much harder to say, I know what parameters and input I am checking because I know what I don't want. And so the whole way we're having to think about this is much broader in terms of guardrails or validation or checking, because it's no longer a regex, right? It's no longer well, if you give me anything other that doesn't look like a username and a password, I'm going to reject it because we're literally giving it instructions and we don't know what we're going to be telling this agent to do or how it's going to evolve and say, hey, I want this whole workflow to work together in this way. So,
Yeah, very, 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 very interesting analogy, right? If you think about it, if I was to try to summarize what you said in one line, right? I think it's a shift from actions to decisions, right?
yeah,
Previously, we were trying to protect exact actions, right? A user goes and clicks on a link, we need to protect it. A user goes and uploads data. A user inputs something. I think that is such a powerful separation now, such a powerful distinction now, where we are now trying to protect decisions that are getting made rather than just the exact action of something doing something, right? Which is, kind of the core of why we are here to discuss, right? Is how do we confidently build AI? How do we confidently use it? How do we confidently secure it, but without slowing everybody down, right? Because I think, you are at the core of it. Organizations are, going to build AI. They're going to incorporate it into their products. They're going to give it to their customers. They're going to let their employees use it. So, how do we, as security people, uh, allow this, right? So let's dig a little bit into that, right? You are, you're in a innovative company. You're actually building AI capabilities. In your head, according to you, what does responsible AI enablement look like for you? For if you have to enable responsible AI development to all the other teams in your company, being the being the quarterback of it, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think fundamentally we had to change the way we even talked about what our job is. Um, it went from, hey, we're protecting you from the bad guys, right? We can't let you install the software because a bad guy could have, put a backdoor in here and it's a Trojan and it's going to take over. To if we do this wrong, is we're excited about AI too, right? We understand as a company if we don't use AI, we will fall behind. The companies that are going to succeed are the ones who figure out this next transition in terms of technology. So it goes from how do we help not do this the wrong way? Because the quickest way to put the brakes on innovation is to do it wrong. If you do something bad with your customers' data, if you've lost the trust of your customers, you can't innovate anymore. People don't want to do business with you. And so helping reframe that instead of we're not protecting you from the bad guys, we're protecting you from doing a mistake that you don't understand maybe has an unintended consequence. That you are now using this system, relying on this system that you actually don't have control over. That's non-deterministic, that you can't say, well, it passed all my unit tests, so therefore I know we don't have a bug, right? Or I've done even pen testing and we don't have any current vulnerabilities that are higher critical, so we're good. It's the fact that you have this decision piece, this thing that can actually do stuff for you. Um, that's the new frontier, right? And so helping understand that first, we got to start just talking about what is the threat model. Traditional ways of thinking about it are different. I've had discussions with people. It's like it's okay, we don't do X. And I was like, but once you have given this to another LLM or to another agent, you actually have no control over what is being done. Like the intent doesn't transfer. There's no transference of intention. You may have intended it this way. You wrote your code this way, but that's the old world. As soon as you
Yep.
start giving it to an agentic anything, you can even tell it, I want you to do this. I mean, there's that example with, I know we keep using it, the replit example, right? 10 times, do not make changes in production. That is my intent. And if the agent doesn't understand it, then you have no like you have to put other things in place. You have to assume, okay, what we used to do, what we've always done in security is assume breach, right? It's fine if you've got all these doors and all these controls and stuff. You assume they all fail because at the end of the day, an insider can decide, hey, I'm going rogue. I like the money these guys are paying me, to do bad things, and I'm going to attack my company. So we're basically doing business with potential insider threats all the time now with agentic stuff. So if we take that same model and say, okay, assume breach, assume that even though I've told it a million times, do not change production, there's a big chance it's going to change production. So what do? I make sure that any command that looks like it would be change, going to production gets looked at or analyzed, or the intent is managed to say, and it's not really the AI's fault, right? I don't think we can assume that these things are going to get better anytime soon. So I think it's all about guardrails, better visibility. I've heard sandboxes are another good way to describe this, where it's like, look, I don't know what you're going to do. I'm hoping you do this thing. I put these parameters in place, but as soon as you do something else, I want an alert. And it definitely, if it's an execution or a data change or something that could leak customer data, I want to see it first. It's the same kind of things we used before with like proxies, right? Like in many ways, that part hasn't changed, right? We trusted our employees to not do bad things on the internet, but they don't always know when they're doing something bad on the internet. And so
Yep.
that intent doesn't always transfer. And so what we do is we say, okay, if you're really careful about it, you're really worried about this, all your traffic is going to go through this proxy so that we can stop it before we know it's going to a known bad site. Problem with that is that stuff is really hard to keep up on. So traditional ways of being able to see, like allow and block are going out the window because it's really, and in fact, I think we talked about this the other day. It all depends on the context. I don't want you changing production until I want you changing production because maybe you are part of my CI/CD pipeline where I've created this workflow that when you do X, Y, and Z, it's okay to do change in production. So we can't even say, and no way will, AI ever make these kinds of changes because that's not actually utilizing AI in the way that we're hoping we can finally use it. So, um,
Absolutely. I think that's the most interesting part, right? Is you can't say that, oh, I'm not going to give it permissions to update code because otherwise, why the hell will you use it?
yeah,
So
yeah,
you have to give it things that you are allowed to do because you want it to be an extension of you. You want it to automate things that your people were doing. So that whole thing of not giving it access is kind of out of the door,
yeah,
which now automatically makes it very tricky to, and this is something that I never even thought about it that way. It's the same thing like you said, like a user where you have AI taking decisions, but it's all about when does that decision makes sense, right?
yeah,
99.9% of the time it might be okay, or it might be negligent, not malicious, but again, comes back to the point that what is the impact of this going to be, right? So I think the thing that you said, the most critical is the intent, right? When a user or an agent or any AI, right, takes an action, it's about the intent of the action. Does it make sense in the context of what I told it to do? What is going to be the impact of it? I think that it all finally comes down to that, right? Not just the pattern of the data it is sending, or not just the fact that it is sending a SSN or a credit card, but what is going to be the impact of this particular write operation or particular read operation or particular prompt that the user is putting in, whether to a public app, whether to a homegrown, doesn't matter, right? But I think it's our entire enterprise infrastructure is going to get impacted by it. So,
yeah.
um, but if I could dive just one step deeper into this whole point, right? Um, we talked about the intent, we talked about the actions, we talked about the decision making, how things have changed. When you think about your current systems and you think about what telemetry you get today or what how they monitor your systems today, what signals or what from visibility to level of control, what do you think would be useful for you to have that you don't have today, right? In terms of from like you mentioned, giving example whether it's of a proxy or or a DLP, whatever, right? What do you did that it's not about, I'm not talking about the tool per se. I'm talking about the for you to effectively have confidence that okay, I know I'm going to let people use it because I now have what I need to make a decision or to let it be autonomous in nature but have the right level of control. What is it that you would like to have?
Wow. So I always, for me, so I used to be an attacker, and when I've coached people on this before, I'd say, look, even if you can't stop it, because there's tons of stuff you can't stop, right? You can't stop a 0 day if you didn't know about it, right? Like you can't stop an insider threat who just decides today I'm giving someone my credentials. But if you can't actually even tell anyone we saw what happened, that's indefensible, right? Like then it's completely lost. Your answer is we think everything might be compromised at this point. And because if you can't actually say what is and what isn't, you basically have to throw everything out and say we're done. And so um, and I don't love the idea of kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of what people are doing day in, day out. Like no one wants to have Big Brother looking over their shoulder, monitoring everything they do. It, in the past, it was a little easier because we could just check the endpoints. We could be like, look, whatever you do on your machine, we're just going to look at the signal, right? Like if it crashes or if antivirus fires or you're making weird, network connections, we can block that. But what you're typing in an email, we don't really care until it gets sent to someone outside the company. And then we could say, wait a minute, DLP is flagging on this. So unfortunately, none of that works now with AI because there's so many avenues where they can do stuff. So if I had um, my perfect scenario, it would be, and I know this sounds like a terrible shameless plug, but it's having something with you at all times that helps you not do the wrong thing. Like I'm not the one like mentioning it to the security team, giving the security team all the logs. Like one, we don't want to know all that detail, and second, we can't scale. We can't say that's okay. Do this one, and but don't do this one. And this one's like we can't be a real-time spam filter for you. We can't tell you is this site okay? Is this site not okay? But if you could have something that could help coach you and say, this is good, this is not good, this looks risky, let's flag this up. That's the kind of visibility I want, where it's like, what are the trends? What are people doing? What's the behavior, right? Because at the end of the day, security is a behavior problem. It's not a control problem. If we could get people to know what the risk is, right, then we don't have to worry about it because people aren't going to do naturally risky things if they understand what the threat is. Right. Hopefully you haven't hired people in your company who are okay with like, hey, I think this is super risky and that's what I like to do. So um, having that kind of visibility, it's that kind of, it's not just a guardrail. It's more like a early warning system, like how bad is this? What is the potential? What's the confidence that we think this is an okay thing? Most of the best controls and visibility I've seen is statistical, right? It's what does good look like in your environment? As another example, right, we use another tool for JIT. And one of the cool things they've started adding now is they know our behavior. They know, they say, hey, look, this person with this role in this organization is like the only person who has ever asked for this. So we're not saying no, we're not automatically blocking it, but we're just surfacing that up. And that's great intel. Because if I know that guy and I know what he's working on, I can say, yes, he's doing weird things, but I know what he's working on. Go ahead. But when the attacker tries to do it or someone who's going rogue, it's like, hey, yeah, this person in this area, I don't understand why you would need admin in this AWS account, that kind of thing. So it's that kind of, it's more than just visibility, right? I need, the ironic thing is the thing AI is really good at, the summarization, the conceptualizing, the context, gathering all the context points. That's great. That's the kind of stuff that I'm seeing now in like the CSPM space and the auto sim space, but I still am not seeing in the user space. It's not, I'm not getting that same kind of visibility like so and so is doing this thing and he's in a country coming from a location he doesn't normally come from, but everything else looks similar to what they're doing. And we found this Slack message where they mentioned to their boss, hey, I'm going to be working in this location for this amount of time, that kind of stuff. So it's more, I guess, figuring out what we need to worry about still and what we don't. Like that part has never changed. It's just the signal is so much harder to recognize. So we need more context. We need more insight. We need, and something we can really trust, where it's not a bunch of false positives, but also not easily bypass controls, where it's like, hey, all I need to do is blend into the noise. The more I'd still say, like from an attacker perspective, my biggest nightmare was the sysadmin who knew enough about his environment that as soon as he saw my process pop up, he didn't even call anyone. He just killed it because he's like, that doesn't belong in our environment. And worst case scenario, best case scenario, right? It's a rogue process. I'm killing it. Or worse, being able to call someone up and say, hey, so and so, it looks like you're logging in tonight. Is that you? Because as soon as they say, no, I'm at my wife's, at my sister-in-law's house or something like that, I'm cooked. You know what I mean? Like, so it's that kind of real time real insight into what people are doing that is I think an attacker's nightmare. And I think that's where the whole arms race is going to be because they're going to be using AI to try to make it look like a real person and what that person normally does. So the clearer the signal and the better the data, I think that's who wins. Is that person who can really say, I know exactly what's going on. And that's the people side, right? We could do the same thing with processes. We could do the same thing with, inter service communication that hopefully is even better because there should be a lot less randomness. We should be able to, even with an agentic thing, we should be able to say this agent only books travel on these airlines or something like that. It doesn't also try to change people's permissions or call up, the CEO and ask for a gift card or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, we recently, I think, saw a very, very cool example where I won't take the name, but a pretty famous CEO sent a note on Twitter where he got an email from a startup founder saying that I have an offer for somebody offered me to buy my company, but I want to sell it to you instead. And 20 minutes later, he gets an email from a browser AI agent and saying, sorry, that I by mistake sent it to you. It wasn't meant for you. So uh, I think to what you're saying, right? I think we were already trying to um, trying to figure out, we always kept saying for so many years, who human is the weakest link, human behavior, all of this. And
Yeah.
now I think with AI coming in, that problem has just, it's just gone bigger, right? The attack
Yeah.
surface has just got bigger because now you will have millions of more people taking decisions and taking actions that we'll have tough times in controlling. Uh, you know, AI was reading data, summarizing, taking action, sending emails, and we have so many examples. In our last episode, also we covered so many different examples that have already happened in just barely 12 months or so in the journey, right? So yeah, and I think that's I think the confidence gap that the security team is seeing, and whereas the other teams are seeing the productivity and the usage of it, versus completely the risk side of it. Um, we also ran a survey, in the webinar last time, this time, and one of the constant things that we hear from most enterprise leaders is they don't see full AI usage. They don't. The security stack isn't built for this whole agentic, autonomous um, world of where actions are beyond just a user uploading data or a user copy pasting something or replying to an email. The stack is not built for this new enterprise, and constant progress and work that is needed between engineering and security, right? Even for example, when we do our own proof of concepts, and customers have to plug in our gateways, our guardian agents into their homegrown AI. Uh, it takes a while for them to get to get them to do that, because they have to convince the team, they have to get them to use it. So is that, how do you see that? Is that kind of matching with what you are seeing in your network? On how do how do how's that balance that you're seeing between value and risk, I would say?
Yeah. I mean, it's right now, I think that the balance beam or whatever is it's more risk right now than the actual value in terms of the org at large, right? I definitely find a lot of value using AI. I don't use it for sensitive things, right? But I use it for, research and, basically how I used to use the internet before. I think code usage has been very valuable. I think that's a really good start. The stuff I've seen with like Copilot and Claude and, you know, all of them, most of them right now, like Cursor, that's really valuable. Being able to understand the context, understanding the code and saying, hey, what used to take us weeks, we can get done in, an afternoon. I've seen that in real time. Not all the code's great. I've definitely seen some mistakes. I've definitely said, please don't put secrets in source code. And I still see secrets going in source code from the agent. But yeah, I'd say it is hard because we are trying to, it used to be that we could say, um, once I've approved an app, once I've approved, I basically approved all the usages of it, right? Like if we allow Gmail in our environment, even if someone in my company decides to log into their personal Gmail account, I'm not freaked out, right? I know that I've approved Gmail, and if they're using it for work, everything's okay. If they're using it for their own thing, that's completely separate. But now I'm saying, okay, I've allowed you to use ChatGPT. But if you do these things, it's okay in this context with this data. If you do that same kind of thing with other data, that's totally not okay. And if you're not this person and you're doing this thing and you're not using your business account, that's also not okay. So I would say it's just exploded the kind of, visibility gap and control gap that we have before. Like I feel, honestly, it feels like in this aspect, we've gone 10 years back, like where we were first figuring out stuff and we realized like, yeah, maybe we should be looking at audit logs a lot better. And maybe we should be monitoring what someone does on their browser and that kind of stuff. Now I feel like we've lost all of those gains because the landscape has just exploded, right? Like really are no borders. We're literally in the wild, wild west. You literally could do anything you want. And so everything that we had that we had been building up, it feels like I've got no visibility now. It feels like worse than before. And that's really scary. It's like all these gains I thought we had, it's like I don't have them anymore because you're no longer in the space where I have better visibility, where I can see what's going on, where I can put controls in place, where I can validate, yes, we are actually using it in this way. So I think the right way to do this is to move people onto I used to get you do this scenario all the time with just basic hacking and stuff like that, where I'd be like, I used to go to Johns Hopkins. They had a bunch of paths and like little chains saying, please do not walk on the grass because if everyone walks on the grass, it dies. There's nothing stopping people from just walking over that chain and walking right across the grass. The difference, though, is if the majority of people are staying on the path, that one guy that's running across the quad, everyone sees it, right? Like it stands out like a sore thumb. You're like, hey, you're obvious. Even though there was nothing stopping him, it was the fact that, like, oh, we can see what's going on. You're the person that we need to, you know, get
Move on.
after or whatever. So same kind of thing with this, where it's like if even if these things are easy to bypass, even if people could go off and do their own thing, if we can at least get people onto golden paths or guardrailed paths or whatever you want to call it, the happy, well manicured garden, then those outliers are easier to spot. And ideally, honestly, in this situation, I think if we can give people a better secure by default on ramp, that they want to use. Like, for instance, take the same analogy of the path. If the path that people want to walk on is also the better path, then you get a lot less people. Like, why people are only going to take shortcuts because that's the best thing for them in that situation. So if we can
Yep.
give them a much better situation, then I think that's great, right? Like, there's a lot of people. I think there's even more people who want to use AI more. They just don't know how to do it, or they're not aware of all those different things. I'd say mostly people in our company aren't aware of MCP servers. They aren't realize that, hey, you can actually add additional tool sets to Claude to name your, favorite AI-based browser client, right? They're just based on like, hey, I just love the fact that it can help me with my words. But we're talking about like you could actually create your own workflows. If you already have a login to Slack and Jira and all these things, you can create your own workflow. You don't need to wait for a developer to do that for you. So that's where I kind of see the opportunity is basically give them a way to, and I've seen other solutions like whether it's proxies or gateways or custom, installs of agents that already have a bunch of pre-built MCP servers that are already agreed on. That's that could be really beneficial. Where it's like, look, we've already given you things we pre-approved. It's the same kind of concept with like MDM and you know enterprise-based specific stores. Like, hey, we've already approved
Yep.
this is the version of X thing, application that you're going to be looking for anyway. You don't have to worry about finding the wrong one and getting malware.
You
IT's already validated all these. It's already, this is what you want. And so giving people those options, I think, then gives us that visibility, right? Because if we can get them on the path, we can say these ones already have monitoring baked in. We already know
Yep.
all of your interactions. And then
Yep.
that is because honestly, at the end of the day, if people want to go off and go rogue, they're going to do it. And we can't stop it and we can't see it. So what we want to do is make people not want to do that other option. This is the same thing with shadow IT, right? This is shadow AI. It's even easier to people for to onboard and do their own thing. So we need to make the right way, the secure way, more attractive than anything that's shadow and not in our purview.
Yeah, that's a very fair point actually. And but what you bring up an interesting point, right? If you think about it, whether it's a salesperson in our team or it's a developer or it is our engineering team, doesn't matter. I think everybody in different ways or forms are going and adopting, getting in AI into our enterprise, and automatically, introducing a new variable, changing the way data is touched and moved in our organization, right? And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that I am seeing it, with based on what you are saying and the other customers you're talking to, is that I think it's the security is having to figure out. I'll just take a very simple technical example. Eh, People are going to go build applications, chatbots, whatever, in your company. They're going to go connect to whether it's to OpenAI or to Gemini or put their own model, whatever, right? Um, the only question here is not to tell them no, because I don't think that's going to work. Is to tell them that, okay, you want to do whatever you want, but I don't know, here's a model behind a secured gateway, just use this instead. Or here's, the MCP servers that are behind a secured gateway that we have approved. Go use that and make the process for them to adopt it, for them to, ask for a new thing. Uh, Kind of the same way of how it has been with SaaS applications, right? Reach to that kind of level of where we can make the usage and the adoption seamless, but at the same time, it is it kind of it comes through us, so that we have tested these whether it's the MCP servers or these models, we have tested it from a red teaming perspective. We've put the right guardrails in place, or we've put the right detections in place. We have the right interaction visibility. So, and I feel that's the route that we will have to go, so that people can still do what they want to do. Just that at least we get to control. We'll never be able to control every 100% of it. That's just not a practical thing in security. But at least we get to control a major portion of it. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of examples we can see with that. Like, I think SaaS is a great example of that. There's nothing easier than saying, especially if it's self-service, and say, I need access to our Salesforce. And you
Yeah.
automatically get your SSO account set up and you just log in and it's in your My Apps. You know what I mean? Like, that's better
Yep.
than someone having to even just sign up themselves and say, I just want to trial and I want to try this out. That's a lot of that stuff where
Almost,
it's like, yeah,
it's
give
almost,
them the
it's
security
almost
defaults.
like, yeah, I almost envision that that's going to be the future, where we're going to have to make AI available to people the same way how we made these SaaS apps available to people, right? It's
Yeah.
like kind of my AI portal kind of a thing, where
Yeah.
it's easy for people to use it so that we can control the usage.
Yeah.
Uh, in your opinion, Ben, for what would be your kind of guidance or um, advice to engineering or security leaders who are working in organizations that are building AI, that are deploying AI, not just the public side of AI, the chat GPTs, but who are building their own AI applications, the chatbot, their own agents. uh, what would be your guidance to them on how to work with everything from their engineering team, their board, or the business leaders, where the goal is we don't want to slow down, we want to use AI, and we want to move fast. Kind of what would be your take to them?
Yeah, so I'd say that initial thing I was talking about, where it's like you're changing your perspective, you are no longer looking at yourself like a gatekeeper, but an enabler, because then you're also a benefit to the company. If you help change that narrative, where it's like, we're not keeping you from the bad guys or stopping progress, we're making you, it is that whole concept of going slow to go fast, doing the right things, having these right things in place, these guardrails, this visibility, because it's going to happen, right? The old way, the ungoverned way of doing things is we'll figure it out later. We'll ask security later. When our customers are asking, hey, what are you doing with AI and what is your governance policy? And can you tell us every instance when an AI agent has made a decision on our data? That's not the time when you say, hey, security, can you help us with this and figure this out? So, us being partners at the very beginning, just like with anything, right? Same thing with legal, same thing with finance, same thing with product management, right? It's all part of the same thing. And helping understand your place and your role in the actual product, and that you're not just a band-aid or even just a protection or control that gets put on place, but it's really embedded inside of the whole why are we doing this and how are we doing this. That helps. Then you're more of a partner, right? You're not just that gatekeeper, you're not just that no guy. Because then when you're thinking of that, you're like, well, then none of my answers can be no, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, all of my answers then need to be, okay, yes, you can do this, but this is what's going to happen. Because that's what happens. I mean, I guess sometimes in engineering you say no, but most of the time it's like, well, if we do this, our costs are going to blow up, right? Or if we do this, everything's going to fall over. You rarely say, well, that's impossible, or we're not working in this area if it's impossible, right? Like, and
yeah,
so understanding that is you're more of a partner, giving people, like I was saying, secure by default. One of the best solutions I've ever seen of like the issue of secrets in source code was not, hey, we're going to scan this, and if we find source code, secrets in your source code, we're going to block the PR. Like, no one loves that. In fact, I actually saw this is at a different company. I saw a lot of effort being done from an engineering perspective to obfuscate secrets so that it would bypass the control, which is not saving anyone any time. Like, the best solution I saw is when security helped create a library that could be used by anyone who wanted a secret that was easier than them trying to create the secret or finding it in a vault and hard coding it in there. Because it was so easy where it's like need secret, here is the identifier, and then it just works. And the rekeying works and all that stuff works. Like that's the kind of seeing yourself as a solution provider and not just not even a consultant or an analyst, like coming to the table with solutions and not just concerns, which is actually something unique that we get that not everyone in a compliance and governance and regulatory framework gets to do. But the fact that we can come with solutions, like we're saying, hey, there's a better way. What if we use this proxy? What if we use this, validation service, that can help analyze and scrub our stuff before it even gets to be a problem. Also, shared understanding and alignment between engineering and security goals are essential. Security should like internalize the things engineering cares about. It's like that whole thing, like I don't care about how much you know until I know how much you care. And that sounds trite, but it's the same thing when security comes to you and says, look, I want you to be able to go fast and secure because being secure will help you go fast. That resonates a lot better than, hey, we're concerned that what you're doing is going to ruin the company. So you need to stop and you need to come talk to us. So just reframing that whole thing. And then vice versa, engineering should want to be secure. Engineering should be able to internalize, with this whole back and forth that, hey, if we do the wrong thing, we stop being able to use that data anymore. Like having more regulations, more, auditors involved, an incident, all of that is going to, slow down our debate, able to innovate and develop. We aren't, our goals aren't orthogonal or even contradictory. They really are in the same space. I just think it's a lack of kind of opening up your viewpoint to see, hey, we don't work in isolation. This thing literally, directly affects this other thing. Trust is something that everyone should want, right? Not just security. Engineering should want their customers to be able to trust their product, that kind of stuff. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
just kind of changing the narrative. Don't lead with regulations and frameworks. Lead with a what happens when this goes wrong? Because that's something engineering understands, right? If you're saying, hey, look, if this thing fails, XYZ, right? Or if we don't have this thing, we won't know why this thing failed. We won't be able to do good, postmortems and root cause analysis, that kind of stuff. If you can couch it in those terms, then people will be the coolest thing is when engineering actually fights your battles for you, right? When they're the ones asking for more funding or more resources because they're like, we want to be able to go fast and do this thing that engineering, security showed us we can't do without this tool or without this product or without this ability to onboard faster. SSO is a great example of that, right? We had a bunch of, individual IAM users inside of AWS. As soon as we could show that, look, you can get faster with SSO because it's all managed centrally, like with JIT, and you can get everything you need. You don't have to worry on IT, wait on IT to grant it individually. It's all automated. All of a sudden, they were asking, hey, how can we do this? How can we onboard more things? And that's awesome, right? Because we don't scale. Having everyone think of and being proponents and basically cheerleaders for security is great. And that's, I think, where things start, really aligning.
absolutely. And I think that's the whole point, right? Security to be a partner, not a gate, because in this case, unlike a lot of other things, right? It's all about, we cannot be, even security cannot afford to be downstream, right? We have to come between the interaction. Because once the interaction is done, the action is taken, it's already too late for us also. So in this case, that collaboration even becomes more important because I think this is one of the first technologies where we have to act as which with the cost of not adopting it is higher than the cost of adopting it. But at the same time, from a security perspective, also like you said, the paradigms have to is changing because we have to be able to look at those data movements, those actions or decisions before they happen while keeping it frictionless for the people using it, right? So I think the future, the way I look at it, is all about human in the loop guardrails, agent in the loop reasoning, where as agents are taking action in the loop, there is an analysis happening to figure out, does this action make sense? Is this action that this agent is about to do going to cause a breach, or being able to work very closely, like you shared, with a shared responsibility model between engineering and security that is aligned at the bottom. That okay, at a core we are aligned that this is what we want to do, and then building everything on top of that. Um, and I think I feel that's kind of where the future is, going.
Yeah.
Um, to come get this to a close, Ben, just what do you, from a closing thoughts perspective, uh, what would give you the most confidence uh, to allow AI to be used at scale across any company? If you had to got a lot of confidence that okay, yep, now I feel very comfortable. What would those top three, four, 5 points be? That okay, if I can get these four, five things in place, then I would be. Of course, I'm not talking about 100% because the technology that we're adopting is still at a nascent stage. We don't even know the full potential of it. But today, what would be the three, four, five top things in your head that will allow you to, feel a lot more confident about this whole thing?
Yeah, so honestly, it would be the same kinds of things that we already have now for like cloud and SaaS apps and even for internal things that we just are missing for AI. So think about it, like anything from vulnerability management, of being able to scan the code and say, you are using vulnerable packages, right? I need to be able to create a ticket on that. I need to have visibility on that so that the people who can make the change can make the change. I need visibility into what our current security stance is. You know, where are the holes? Where are the open doors? Where are the keys that could be compromised? All of that kind of stuff. And then how does that chain into an attack chain that an attacker could use so that I know which things to actually focus my efforts on. And then guardrails so that the things we already know are going to be a problem get stopped before they get committed, right? Like we have scanning done in PRs to say, hey, this thing is a risky, not even a risky behavior. This is, a known vulnerable dependency. Bump it up the version. This is a secret. Don't put it in source code. This is a code problem. Our SaaS tools have identified it. We don't have any of those things right now for AI. So if you look at those same kind of like analogies, it's visibility. Like what are you actually using for a beginning? That could be your vulnerability management, right? These different models have different issues, right? And we're going to start seeing more of that. We're like, hey, such and such a thing is vulnerable to X. Right now, they share a lot of the same vulnerabilities, but that kind of same thing, like that inventory of where is it being used, so that it's almost like a bill of materials, like how we have with how we build our code. How are you building all these AI things? Like getting that level of granularity would be awesome, especially when you start talking about embedded AI, other systems, so that we can start answering all those other questions. Like we can definitively tell a customer where AI is being used, how it's being used, which data is being used. We might have agreements with people where like, we're okay if you use these models, but not those models. How do we possibly engineer for that right now? And we don't even know all the places where this stuff is getting plugged in. So it's that kind of total inventory, just like how I have right now with my CSPM. I want a total inventory of the AI. And I don't think CSPMs are just going to solve that because it's very nuanced, right? It's my CSPM is not going to be able to talk to my providers of other things that aren't just the cloud. So it's that kind of, and they're not going to be involved in the browser. And that's part of our bill of materials. That's part of the dependency graph. So, and then being able to check things before it happens, right? Saying, hey, you are committing this code that has this vulnerability, same kind of thing. Hey, you are submitting code, you're submitting a prompt that has sensitive data, and we don't allow that. That's not part of the things. You don't even want that. That's not something we do. To the same thing where it's like, hey, this now we put in the prompt, the LLM or your agent is going to do something. By the way, this is what it's going to do. That's like, luckily, we don't need to do that so much right now in runtime, but that is a whole new frontier where it's like, hey, it's almost like your antivirus or your container-based, runtime protections where we can say, these file actions shouldn't be done. We've got to scale that up for AI where it's like these agent to agent communications, these tool sets are not allowed under these circumstances with that intent. And then finally, those controls, right? Where it's like, you'd never be allowed to do this in code. That's a secret. That's a risky behavior. If we can finally quantify all of this and start moving it as far left as we possibly can to say, that's a known bad behavior. That is an easily, bypassable prompt. You have no protections in place to validate that the thing you are sending is not going to be corrupted or changed and have this stuff leaked out. So it's, I know it probably will take us a long time to get there, but I think the good news is fundamentally security hasn't changed. The concepts are the same. Like where are your most vulnerable areas? Where is the risk? What's the likelihood that that's going to happen? The thing that's changed is that we've adopted these black boxes that are so much more risky, so much more vulnerable, and we're treating them like a partner, and we're treating it like a person almost, which is like it's not a person, right? It's this alien entity that does not. That's one of the things. I don't know. We're almost out of time, but the thing that scares me the most is at least with a person, when I'm worried about the actions they're going to take, I know it is a fellow human on the other side. And I feel like I either understood them and they understand me or not. And if I say, don't do this thing, or like I trust that they care about their job, that they want to keep their job, that they care about actually doing a good thing. An agent acts very much like a human, but is not a human. It has no morality. It doesn't care if it makes a mistake. It may act like it, but I can say, don't do this thing. And it just, the algorithm, the probability lines up a certain way and it does it anyway. And that is the scary thing is we do not have the right way and it's our own humanity betrays us, right? Because we think we're talking to a fellow human, even though we know it's not. And so we don't put the right controls in place. With you, like if I ask you to do something, I don't say, well, I got to validate everything he does and make sure he's not doing it right. Like I trust you, right? Whereas we're literally giving this unearned trust to this agent without the right validation. So it's that whole thing, trust but verify. With humans, it's a little easier with agents, we're so far on the trust side and almost have no verify in place. And that's really what we need to focus on.
Absolutely. No, this is very, very great thoughts, man, and extremely real in terms of what people should be thinking about and how should be thinking about the adoption of it and how we can increase the confidence in our in this transformation that we are that we're about to go through. Like I think I always like to say what we're entering now, it's not about AI security, it's not about data protection, right? I think it's about our entire enterprise architecture is going to go through a massive change. And we're
Yeah.
just at the cusp of it. And it's about figuring out in this new world what is the right way of protecting it. The core fundamentals will never change. But suddenly the actors and the surfaces and the mentalities is changing of what we are dealing with here.
Yeah.
Uh, Anyways, thank you so much, Ben, for for the time and diving deep into this. And um, I'm pretty sure I speak for everybody who's been attending this that I think this is very helpful for people to hear in terms of how really AI gets used, adopted, transformed with, and yeah, thanks everybody for being on here and hearing us talk. And we look forward to be seeing you in our volume 3, which we'll announce very soon. Um, Tammy, off to you. Ben, any closing thoughts you would like to add?
No, thanks for having me. This is my pleasure. I think someone asked a question. Do we have an answer? Do we have ability to answer that question
Yeah,
before we leave?
I'm just gonna answer that. Ben, if you want to, you can also do that.
You want to read the
Yeah,
question
I
first?
absolutely think I would
Okay.
say we're already using security agents right now to help balance it out because we were already underwater and now it's just increased like 5 to 10 fold and we cannot do it alone. We're already using AI agents to help with triage. We're using AI agents to manage, to look at all this stuff that we just do not have the resources for. So I think, yes, that's the thing people aren't really talking about is yes, you have more manpower technically, but all those other things need to scale up, whether it's managers, security, IT, all that stuff. It's not like you get those people for free.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Perfect. Tammy, off to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You
thanks.
have
I
another
think there's
question.
one more question. Can you share a simple example of a data leak attempt, and how did you prevent it or know about it?
Um, I'll answer that. I don't want Ben to talk anything about the company here. So we've seen quite a few different examples, very interesting ones for that matter. I think, you know, uh, to be honest, more than typical PII and stuff, where you have the social security or the license and stuff. What we are seeing more is generic business data being leaked out. One of the most common things we saw with one customer is that's become like a household thing is board meeting minutes. I think everybody who's talking to me has heard me say this because this was a very real example we found. where people putting board meeting minutes has become like such a common thing without realizing that these are public companies, and these are companies that are not, you're not supposed to disclose what happened in that meeting before it's the next quarter, etc. But that's one of the crucial things we have detected and found across various areas, amongst other things. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Appreciate everybody. We'll let you know on episode 3. And Ben, very much appreciate you taking the time for it. Thanks everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Sammy,
Thanks.
for doing this. Thank you.